Hey, George, let's start with Jefferson. Neil's talking about how he's improved, really over his time, but you've seen him making strides this year. What do you see out of Jordan, and, where's he progressed the best, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's just confidence in his play. He was a kid that played a lot earlier than he was ready. If you go back to 19, the COVID year really helped JJ give him an extra time that he needed, that he didn't get on the front end. So I think it's for him, because he could have easily reclassified and been a 20 signee. It would have been in the 20 class, right? So a young player in the 19 class. Started his first game here when he was 17 years old. There's a lot of growing takes place between 17 and 2021, particularly mentally as much as physically. So that's the biggest difference, just confidence in what he is. And I think anybody has to see that from themselves and do it themselves. And then the more they do it, the more confident they are. And that's where JJ is.
I think you told your guys after the game the performance didn't make you unmad. You're still mad.
Yeah.
But is it at least a step in the right direction?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just playing to what we're capable of playing. And I've you guys have heard me say this since the spring. I love this group, and I don't feel any different about them than I did then. I knew where we would have some growing pains. It doesn't change the fact that I think we're more athletic. I think we're faster. None of that has changed. My opinion of them. Still love them. Still think about them in the same light as a player. Obviously we didn't expect to lose Charles, but you got to adjust and move on. Didn't expect to have the guys out going into the game 2, but you did. Doesn't change the way I feel. Now, one win doesn't make me feel any better about how we performed a couple weeks ago, and even the mistakes in game 1. Those are two good football teams. You can't make those mistakes against good football teams. And those are the growing pains this group is I knew was going to go through. It doesn't change how I feel about them. But consistency is the key when you have a lot of new pieces or some young pieces, however you want to look at that. Getting them to play consistent is the key, and if we can just continue to build on Saturday, we'll be fine.
Different challenge with these guys. 2 tight ends they started the game with against Wofford. Going to run the ball, all of that. What do you see from Tech?
Running backs are as good as anybody we've played. The O-line there's some different guys that there were last year. I don't think they're much different talent-wise. They do some things, run game, that give you some issues schematically that can cover for some deficiencies. Not saying that they have any. It's just it's a tough run scheme. But the running backs make it go, and like I said, they're as good as anybody that we've played. Wells off the throw game off of those. He's got a strong arm. He's accurate. Knows where to go with the ball. So it's a challenge.
Dante still came into the year wanting to change some parts of the game to match up with what the NFL reported. Has he been able to do that, and how much difference has it made in this game?
Yeah, I mean he has. Here's an example of exactly what we're talking about. Jordan Jefferson's sack the other day, great play by him, and he got the stat. Dante made the play because Dante set up that twist game for Torres Simmons, who come in. He come in a little too. His angle was a little too steep. He got in a bad body position. He missed the sack. JJ cleans it up. Dante forced that pocket to collapse off of that particular call. So there's an example of him within the scheme, doing his job, doing it consistently, and guys they're gonna know where 55 is, and their protections are gonna go to him. What he understands now that he didn't was it doesn't frustrate him. He understands it. and understands that that's a good thing, for him, that somebody is paying that much attention to him. Now it's, hey, figure out what they're doing and see if we can do some things to try to hide him and disguise him and use other people to get him free, and that's what we have to do. So, but no, it's helped us. It's going to help him.
We talked a lot with Coach Brown about how the noise could impact the offense. How could the noise impact the defense, and what conversations are you maybe having about that environment in Blacksburg?
Well, I mean, we've seen that people how they're going to attack us with a lot of motions and a lot of shifts, and I think that a little bit of that we had the opportunity to prepare for in the Pitt game. Not that I think that this game will be louder, just because we're I think it's one of the, I think that's just one of the loudest environments in all of college football, quite honestly. But we did have a good environment in the Brawl first game of the year, so it's something that it's not like anything we haven't been a part of. It doesn't affect you as much defensively because they're not trying to do anything to hurt their own offense. But it's still a sold out at field level game like atmosphere, and you just got to over communicate. Your communication has to be loud, but your communication also has to be echoed throughout the secondary and the front, and guys have to make the same calls down the line, especially away from our sideline. And so that's something that we practice.
Got a fumble recovery, and I know turnovers is something we always talk about. I mean, they just seem to happen sometimes in bunches, but obviously that's something you're talking to your guys about, creating more.
Yeah, I mean, we have to. I mean, that's the difference, and it's been the difference in both of our losses is not making those plays. We got to get more balls on the ground. We got to get our hands on more footballs in the air. Some scenarios we got to be a little more aggressive, and some situational stuff. Whether that's down and distance or recognizing the formation set, whatever it is. But we've got to create more. I think that you see the aggressiveness I'm talking about is when a lot of times when guys aren't doing that, they're letting them be hesitant. You just can't do that, which is, I understand with especially young players. Sometimes that's the case, but we got to get more balls on the ground to have a chance to get them. That one the other day rolls around. We should have scooped, and that should have been a touchdown. We had 2 third downs on breaks that should have been touchdowns for us. So just got to make those plays, and I think the more you play, the more opportunities that you get.
How did Beiser play, in your opinion?
Good, led the team in tackles. The thing about a guy like him, he's going to know where to fit, and a lot of times that's enough. Knowing where to be and do your job, and the ball and the plays come to you. Especially, you just talk about simple things like tackles, and that's what he did. Did his job, and led the team in tackles.
Getting more reps for some of your young DBs. So, what'd you see out of Mallinger and Lamp and Spells and Mumu and anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what we recruited them to be. Athleticism, speed, particularly Davis. Davis has made a couple of big plays this year on a couple of sacks when we send him in some pressure. And, that kind of fits his game. And Davis is extremely fast. He's a physical kid. He's a good blitzer. Those other guys is you talk about the reps that's the first time you've really seen a lot of live game reps. And so the mistakes you see are expected, but you see flashes of exactly why you recruited them here in those reps. So I was pleased with it. I talked about length last week. A guy like that, body type, I always compare him to Sean Martin. And how far Sean's come as far as just getting his body strong enough to support his body. And Lamp's in that same position at a different position, or that same situation at a different position on the field. So, future's bright.
Wells, he's thrown some picks in the past. He's been pretty clean the last couple games. Neil mentioned sneaky athletic too. Do you see that from him?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can't run any RPOs in your offense unless your quarterback has some athleticism and or a combination of speed. That would totally, be like taking me out there running RPO. You wouldn't have to honor the quarterback very many times. So, but yeah, he's athletic, has some speed, can throw on the run, and it's those throws in that type of game, I think, where you see he can make them, and I think that's where you see the drop in the turnovers, because those aren't really throws that that you run that they run that risk with. So
More like one read throw.
yeah,
right?
yeah. So where one person can catch it.
Jordan, you mentioned their pre-snap stuff, motion and shifting. I'm not going to evoke Kansas, but is that something Tech does, or is it something that you kind of assume that teams may do to you, just because of the nature of your
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of both. I mean, I think that that's how until we adjust correctly and get it to where it's slowed down to where guys are confident in their checks and their adjustments. I think that's something that we're probably going to get, and that's on got some last week. And I think as you get into games 2, 3, and 4, you have more of a volume of tendencies to evaluate. You start to maybe have a little foresight on how people are also evaluating you. So we expect them. Try not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but you plan for it. And then I thought our guys last week with what we got, they were much improved from that game, just on alignment. If you can't get line on defense, you can't play. And so that was probably the biggest thing coming out of that we had to improve. I mean, and you're always going to have to adjust on the run, the best that you can. So that's just part of the chess match that you're going to get on Saturdays.
Biggest issue for you short prep week?
Mm-hmm.
What is the biggest issue?
Oh, well, I mean, it's you just have to be smart with what you're trying to do, and still at the same time game plan what you need to with what you need to stop. Good thing for me is especially early in my career, this was every week. It was Thursday night games. You just have to be smart about it. You have to.
Sometimes better.
Oh yeah. But then again, sometimes an offense requires you to do certain things. Based on, not all of them are similar, but not all of some of them are Kansas. I'll use an example, is a little bit off base than what you see every Saturday. Sometimes you see the same play sets, is different, dressed up a little different, and so you just work that. But yeah, I mean, simpler is better. But there's also you have to work on what you have to stop. You have to have things that maybe you don't do or you haven't done as much or well that you got to have for that opponent. So it's just it's figuring out in that short time frame what's best for your kids.
I guess on the flip side, they don't have as much time to work on wrinkles or
Correct.
things that would introduce just not enough time, right?
Yeah, no, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
It goes, preparation is short for both teams, and I'm sure they do just like we do. You got to do what's best for your kids and get them in a situation to go play.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.